Welcome to the Million Podcasts. In today's episode, we're reading our article, What is Million Podcasts? How does it help podcast outreach? Let's get started. Podcast outreach fails in one of two ways. Either you spend half a morning tracking down contacts that bounce or route to a generic inbox nobody monitors, or you pay for a database, export a few hundred entries, and discover a chunk of them belong to shows that stopped publishing last year. Both problems trace back to the same root. The data was not built for outreach. It was built for something else, and outreach was added later as an afterthought. That gap between what a tool was designed to do and what you are trying to use it for is where most campaigns quietly fall apart. This guide explains what a podcast database actually is, why most alternatives do not qualify despite using the name, and what you are looking at when you open a purpose-built one like Million Podcasts. What this guide covers? What Million Podcasts actually is. Why most podcast contact databases fail. What you see when you log into Million Podcasts. What opens when you click a show. Why verified data beats volume. And who Million Podcasts is built for. Section 1. What Million Podcasts actually is. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and similar platforms are podcast directories built for listeners. They help people discover shows, follow episodes, and simply press play. Million Podcasts is a podcast database built for outreach, with over 2.9 million active podcasts and more than 1 million verified contact details. It exists for the person trying to get a guest booked, a sponsorship placed, or a pitch in front of someone who will actually read it. That means the platform is organized around a different question. Not what should I listen to, but who should I contact, and does this show fit what I am trying to do? The answer comes from verified booking contacts, audience data, publishing activity, audience geography, listener psychographics, and filters that let you shrink millions of shows down to the few that actually fit your brief. You search, you filter, then you export a list that is ready to pitch. No morning loss to dead emails, inactive shows, or generic inboxes nobody checks. If you are still in the early discovery phase, Million Podcasts also maintains a public-facing podcast directory where you can browse curated lists by niche, geography, or theme before moving into deeper filtering and outreach workflows. Section 2. Why most podcast contact databases fail. Most outreach problems do not start with the pitch. They start with the list. A lot of podcast databases source contact emails from RSS feeds. That sounds useful until you remember what RSS feeds usually are. Contact details added when the show launches, then left untouched for months or years. In practice, that means you often get an outdated personal address, a catch-all inbox, or a contact form that leads nowhere useful. Then there is the other problem. Shows go inactive quietly and sometimes permanently. A database that does not track activity is full of listings that look alive, but are really just leftovers from a more active period in the show's history. You end up pitching podcasts that have not published in months, sometimes longer. That is how campaigns fail before they start. Emails bounce. Delivery suffers. Response rates look weak. And the pitch gets blamed even though the real issue is the data under it. Million Podcasts is built to avoid that trap. Contacts are manually researched and verified rather than scraped from a launch day feed, and listings are continually updated so inactive shows and changed details do not sit there pretending to be usable. Section 3. What you see when you log into Million Podcasts. A search for technology does not return a flat list and call it a day. It returns 3 different views at once, and each one solves a different part of the outreach problem. AI results surfaces matches using semantic understanding rather than only literal keyword matching. So a show does not need the exact term tech in its title or description to appear there. If the content is relevant, the platform can still surface it. Podcast returns the show-level matches with full profile data attached. Episodes goes one layer deeper, returning episode-level results for the same search. Which means you are not only finding podcasts that sit inside a category, but finding hosts who have actually talked about the topic in a specific episode. That matters when you care less about broad classification and more about whether the host has already entered the conversation you want to join. For a founder who wants to appear on shows discussing AI regulation, or a brand looking for hosts already active in B2B SaaS, this is the difference between a broad match and a real opening. Million Podcasts also includes advanced search features such as Boolean search and multi-layer filtering. This allows you to combine keywords using operators like AND, OR, and NOT while stacking filters together. The result is a highly targeted list built around exactly the kind of shows you want to reach, without needing to manually refine results after export. The filter sidebar is where the platform stops being a large database and starts becoming a targeting tool. Instead of manually excluding irrelevant results after fact-checking, you build precision from the start with advanced filters. You can filter by latest episode date, search fields, podcast information, location, listener type, language, estimated monthly listeners, content beats, podcast networks, and much more. The result is simple. A PR team building a list of Spanish-language fintech podcasts in the United States that accept sponsors and have verified contact details can apply those filters and get a usable list in minutes, rather than spending a morning on manual research. Section 4. What opens when you click a show? This is where the platform stops being a search tool and becomes a decision tool. A show profile is not just information stacked on a page. It is structured to answer a sequence of questions in the exact order they matter during outreach. So by the time you reach the bottom, you already know whether the show belongs on your list. Everything starts with the person behind the conversation. You are not looking at a generic inbox or a leftover RSS email that may or may not still be active. You are looking at a specific contact name, verified email, role, social profiles, and location. That changes the starting point entirely. Instead of sending something into a void, you know who you are writing to before you write anything. The difference shows up immediately in how you frame the pitch and whether it gets read at all. Once you know who you would be contacting, the next question is simpler. Is this show alive and consistent? The profile makes it obvious. You can see the latest episode date, total episode count, launch date, publishing frequency, and average episode length. Together, these tell you whether the show is active, how disciplined the release schedule is, and whether it is operating at a level that justifies outreach. Then comes a deeper question. What does the host actually care about? Instead of forcing a show into a single broad category, the platform breaks content into layered beats. A podcast might sit across technology, politics, society, and culture, and more specific themes at the same time. That combination tells you far more than a single label ever could. It tells you how the host thinks, what angles they return to, and what kind of conversations they are willing to have. This is the difference between sending a pitch that technically fits the category and one that actually fits the show. Before you go further, two simple indicators answer another important question. Does the show take guests, and does it run sponsors? If a show does not take guests, the decision is already made. You move on. If it already runs sponsors, you know the model exists and are not trying to create something from scratch. Then comes the audience layer. Every profile includes estimated monthly listeners, but raw numbers only get you part of the way there. What matters more is who those listeners are. This is where listener type comes in. Not demographics, but psychographics. Whether the audience is made up of policymakers, business leaders, activists, educators, entrepreneurs, or something else entirely. Two shows can have identical audience sizes and live in the same category, but reach completely different kinds of people. One might align perfectly with your message. The other might not move the needle at all. Finally, there is geography. Each profile includes a country-level distribution of listeners, so you can see exactly where the audience is concentrated. A show recorded in Canada might draw most of its listeners from the United States. A UK-based host might have a predominantly Australian audience. Without this data, you would filter them out too early or include them for the wrong reason. With it, the decision becomes straightforward. Section 5. Why verified data beats volume. There is a common temptation in outreach to optimize for list size. It feels productive. Bigger sounds better. More contacts sounds like more chances. In practice, that trade-off usually loses. A list of 500 unverified contacts may look impressive until bounce rates start climbing. Inboxes prove irrelevant, and hours disappear into cleanup before a single pitch goes out. A smaller list of 100 verified, relevant contacts behaves differently. Every email has a real chance of landing in front of the right person. The list is smaller, but the odds are better. That is why the quality of the data matters more than the size of the export. Good contact data protects sender reputation, saves time, and makes actual outreach feel like an extension of the research rather than a gamble with bad inputs. Section 6. Who MillionPodcasts is built for. PR professionals and outreach managers get the most obvious benefit. Targeted podcast media lists that do not need to be rescued after export. Marketers and brand teams care most about the audience layer. Listener type and audience geography tell them whether a show is actually a fit for the founder, executive, or message they want to place. Podcasters use the platform differently. They look for guests, sponsors, and collaborators. Episode-level search is especially useful here because it surfaces hosts who have already covered related topics, which creates a warmer path to a real conversation than category browsing alone. The one honest thing worth saying: MillionPodcasts will not write your pitch, manage your CRM, or guarantee responses. What it does is remove the part of podcast outreach that quietly destroys most campaigns before they begin. Unreliable contacts, inactive shows, irrelevant results, and research that eats the day before outreach even starts. A clean, verified list changes the baseline. It gives the pitch a fair chance to work. Want to see the difference for yourself? There is a free trial. Search your niche. Open 3 or 4 show profiles. Look at the contact data, the listener psychographics, and the geographic distribution. That usually answers the question faster than a comparison article ever can. Thanks for listening to the Million Podcasts. You can explore the platform using the link in the description. See you in the next episode.